Hello, friends. Welcome back to the School of Self Worth. I'm your host, Nicole Song. I am so excited to dig in this year with my top 8 lessons from 2024. I did this last year. It was a super popular episode. So I'm super excited to bring this back for you. And I'm going to share with you like my exact process and how I came to this point. And it's going to be just, I think, a super fun episode with lots of lessons learned. And before I dig in, if you are an Asian American woman who wants to manifest for a promotion, in 2025 and want to know the exact way and the things you have to work on in 2024 to get there, DM me January on Instagram at Nicole Song and let us chat. Okay, friends, are you ready to hear the 8 major things I figured out in 2024? Let's do this. All right. Do you ever get to the end of the year or you're like getting close to the end of the year and you start to feel anxious that you didn't complete everything that you set out to do in the beginning of the year? I would say I don't feel anxious, but I tend to start to reflect and be like, okay, what did happen this year? And, it is a calendar year. I always remind my clients that a calendar year is, a really beautiful framework. It's not the only framework, it's just one that we all tend to do culturally. So I like to honor that this is a time of renewal, this is a time of reflection. And so I will be sharing with you as well my reflections, my thoughts from what happened in 2024, and hopefully you can garner something from it for yourself or even inspire you to do something and create a practice around this. So these are lessons that I learned in 2024 because sometimes, we look back, we had all these goals, we had all these dreams, and you might be feeling possibly disappointed that you didn't hit them. And I'm here to tell you, like, that's okay when we don't hit those goals. To me, those are the biggest learning moments. So, a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you is actually around the goals, the things that didn't happen the way that I expected. Some of these lessons might sound a little familiar because I'm human and I have to learn things a million times often before I finally put it into practice. So there are some lessons that may have repeated from last year, but I learned them with a slightly different frame and lens this year. And 2024 truly was a doozy. It's one where I didn't get married. That was last year, but I made major changes in my business. I made some major decisions in my personal life, and I had some really, really massive openings and realizations about myself. Probably some of the most profound insights about myself personally that I've had in a really long time. So I'm really excited to share all of this with you. The format for this is I'm going to count down from my lesson 8 all the way to my top lesson of the year. You definitely want to stay tuned for lesson 1 because wow, that one is a big one for me to share with all of you. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this conversation. Lesson 8. So this one is to flow when life gets unpredictable. And there's a principle one of my teachers, Suzanne Conrad, talks about called balance is dynamic. And this one is very much based on that because I felt like life this year was very unpredictable and life it required a lot of me being very dynamic. I often go into a year feeling very clear. Like I'm like, okay, I know the goals that I have. I always have a theme for the year. I always have a word for my business. And then it never does almost any of the things that I think that it's going to. Like I have the goals and I have the dreams and I have the things I want to execute. Like for this year, for example, I really wanted to make a lot more progress on my book that I'm working on. And I just didn't. I didn't make even close to the amount of progress. I thought I would be very far past finished with the proposal and like working on the book itself by this point. And it just was ended up being a year where the book was not my focus. And so I am clear, like I'm going to be doing an episode where I talk about what's coming next. And I feel like that is a big part of it. But I had to really come to grips with this like a month ago where this year just wasn't that year. So instead of being hard on myself or beating myself up over it, I'm like, well, Nicole, you had to be in flow this year. There was a lot going on in my personal life. I had a lot going on in my business in particular, a lot going on with my family. And while I always have dreams and goals that I'm working on and that are something that I want to put out into the world. And for me, putting my next book out into the world is definitely a big part of those dreams. It just was a year that I really need to look at how I'm structuring my time. And I'm actually making some big changes to how I structure my time so that next year I can really focus more on the book. And I'm also okay with like I flowed, and this year in that flow, the book wasn't as much part of the flow as I hoped it to be. And that's okay. I think a big part of looking at the lessons from the year is us not being hard on ourselves. It's very much saying like, okay, that was my goal, and now it's time for me to reset. It's time for me to say, hey, it is time to focus on it, and I can forgive myself for not having focused on it previously. So lesson 8 was really very much simply about being in flow as things got dynamic and changed and shifted and moved around a bunch in my business, in my life, in the things that I'm working on, the things that I care about. And I actually feel like me taking a little bit of a pause this year, when you hear my lessons 2, lessons 1, you'll understand why I might have had to pause on the book. And I actually really feel like everything I learned this year is going to make my book a lot stronger and a lot richer. So I feel good about that part. And I also am proud of myself for being in the flow. Okay, lesson 7. This one is a fun one because I have to constantly relearn this one. So, this lesson is there is always enough time. So I used to be someone who believed there was never enough time, like not enough time to do all the things I wanted to do, whether it was within a day, within a year, in a lifetime, and really like not enough time for everything that I want to do, whether it's like how much I need to do to work and get done with my work, whether or it's enough time to do all the things I want to do on the weekend or to go to the movement classes I want to be in or to travel. And like sometimes it feels like everything just gets jammed up back to back against each other on the weekends I have available. So this year, I challenged myself to find more time to read. So many of you know I'm a pretty avid reader. And over the years, I keep increasing the number of books I read. And I think last year I ended up reading, I did read 52 books last year. And my goal was actually, I think I might have read 45. I can't remember exactly, but it was a lot. Last year felt like a lot of books, and so then this year I set the goal of 52, and I was like, "Wow, Nicole, like that's crazy. How are you gonna read that many books? It's a book a week. Some of the books I read are big and long, some of them are short and fast, but still it's like a lot of books." And I really didn't know if I felt like I had enough, and I'm air quoting, time. But this year was also the year that I dove deeply on into romance fantasy romantasy. And if you know what I'm talking about, like if you like Fourth Wing or you like Akatar, you should message me and let's chat because I am a big romantasy fan. And once I started reading those books, my pace of reading picked up so much. And I was amazed at how much time I found. And now let's not count some of the late nights where I found the time and I might have sacrificed a little sleep. But really, what I found is like I had pockets of time all the time where I would want to read for like 10 or 15 minutes, like while I was like, finishing up dinner, or if I wanted to read during my lunch break, whatever it was. And what I realized during this stretch of really getting in deep into a lot of these romantasy books is that I found the thing that was taking up my time and actually taking away time that I wanted to be spending doing other things. You want to know what that thing is? It was my cell phone. That's right, my cell phone. It takes up so much time scrolling. It takes up so much time and it distracts you and it like sucks you in. And while we might tell ourselves like, oh, I'm relaxing or I'm catching up on stuff, I am constantly on my phone for things like that really don't matter. And so when I found that I was really absorbed in books and I was really into what I was reading, I always could make time and prioritize time for what I cared about. And when I cared about the books, I was really off my phone all the time. So it reminded me of a really important lesson is that you have the power to set your own schedule. You have the power to create the time that you need. I don't ever want to live a life where I believe I don't have time because for me that gives time my power away to my calendar and I'm not interested in that. I'm always looking for ways to prove to myself I have all the time in the world. My books definitely prove that to me. I was reading a series recently where I read 6 books in 10 days. And so that I think might be a new record for me. And books really have helped me to see like I have time all the time. They help me relax. They help me prioritize like what do I really want to be doing with my personal time. And for me, reading is a big part of that. So I'm here to share with you that you always have enough time. You just need to be the creator of time in your own life. All right. Lesson 6, ask for help. This is one that I've had to go through many times, asking for help and receiving help. And people often ask me, how do I start to ask for help? And it always really has to start with receiving help. So, receiving help is the first big piece of this. And I am the same way. Like, I used to be a totally go for it alone kind of gal. Like, I was raised by my parents to be super high achieving. You get stuff done. You don't ask for help. Like, I did not, like the culture I was raised in, we did not ask for help. You're smart, you're capable, you can figure it out. And then I became a journalist where that goes even deeper because your job is to problem solve and to figure stuff out all the time. And so you don't ask for that much help. But then when I started to do things I literally had no idea how to do, like run a business or a date post divorce, I often struggled with the steps. And by that point, I had started to understand that free resources on the internet were honestly not enough. It was usually too overwhelming. Like Googling something like that, oh my gosh, like I have no interest in Googling to get answers for stuff like that. So I realized that not only help exists, that it not only does it exist, but it has helped me in many different times in my life go so much farther faster. I was in a car accident this summer and it was minor in terms of injuries, but it was really scary. And I remember that day. So my husband is off in the summer and like he really helped me a lot that day. And I had to learn to receive help because I was tempted to kind of just keep going that day and just like deal with life and whatever. And he was like, no, like sit on the couch, I'm going to bring you some water, I'm going to help you with this. And so I just really, and he helped me with like all of the logistics of insurance and all the pieces that happen when you're in a situation like that. And so I was like, oh, like I was so grateful to like receive that help from him and to also remember for myself, like you can ask for help in those situations. And I also did it a lot in my business where I really asked for more help. Like I have been getting more support behind the scenes of my business. Like I have new coaches that are working in my mastermind. I've invested in help all the time with leadership coaches and other people who work with me. But I just wanted to share again that asking for help is just so underrated. That's what I would say. People underrate it. Like people think they want to do it themselves. And I know there's so many high achievers who are listening. Asking for help is one of the most important things that you can do. It really makes such a difference. And this year I saw it in myself. Like having help gives me time back. It helps me relax and it also helps me go farther so much faster. So when I really keep reminding myself to ask for help, receive help in new ways, like that's what I'm always interested in. What are the new ways I can ask for help? And I saw for myself this year, there were a few different ways that I asked for help that I had never done before and I was really proud of myself. So, lesson 6, ask for help. Okay. All right, lesson 5. So, this is a new practice I took on this year, and it's been one of my favorite ones. And it's to look for fun, celebration, and surprises. And that's it. It's a really simple practice. I prompt my mastermind Monday to Friday with invitations to help them stay grounded. And this is one of the ones that's just one of my favorite ones because then you get to look for fun, celebration, and surprises. Like you just look everywhere for them. And it's one of the best parts of my day to be like, okay, like today is going to be something new and surprising is going to happen. Or I'm going to get and a surprise could be anything. It could be someone texts you who you weren't expecting. Fun could be any kind of fun that you're having that day, or something happens. You're like, wow, that was like super fun. I'm really into that. Or I'm really big into celebration and I can like I have a running list of things to celebrate and my that I always keep by my desk so that I'm always remembering what to celebrate. And I love when I have a really great celebration, but it doesn't have to be a big celebration. It can be a tiny celebration. It can be like, oh, I scheduled a dinner with a friend I haven't seen in a long time. I got a surprise, I can get something in the emails like that's super fun. I'm like, oh yeah, like what a great surprise. And I love being in the energy of expecting fun celebration and surprises. Like that's the part that feels the best. Like I'm just always expecting there's going to be something that happens in that day that's really fun and surprising. And it just makes my whole day better. So this one I highly recommend to you because it could be, yeah, you get, someone buys you coffee. Like one of my coaches sent me a Starbucks card for my birthday. Like what a fun surprise. And I was totally not expecting that. Or other people, like birthdays, I just had my birthday month. And so there's always like a lot of fun that happens that month. But I just love getting unexpected notes, just like little cute things, or it could be just like fun is hanging out with my dog. But I'm just in that energy all the time. So that's my lesson 5. Look for fun, celebration, and surprises. Okay, this next one is related, lesson 4, to looking for fun, celebration, and surprises. But I wanted to really separate out fun because it is something that for me, I used to not choose fun very much. Like I chose some fun, but I feel like in my life now, I'm really very much driven by fun. It's one of the values of my company. Like it's something that I really care about is choosing fun. And so this year, one of the ways I chose fun, this is going to be funny, is because I told you to stay off your phone, but it's from TikTok. I spent a lot of time on TikTok this year, and I probably met quite a few of you who are listening through TikTok. So I am a content creator and I've tried a lot of different platforms. And sometimes platforms are not very fun. They feel like a drag, they feel like an obligation, they feel like a responsibility. But one of the things the reason I went with TikTok is because it was fun. I find it to be a very fun platform. There's like a lot of entertainment on there. There's lots of things that are going on, people doing silly things. And so I gravitate towards it because I find it to be really fun. And when I got on TikTok, all of a sudden, content creation did become fun. It became natural. It became easier for me. And to me, this is really a metaphor for life. Like if you are doing a workout that you hate, like going to the gym and you're just still doing the elliptical, even though you hate it, you should drop it and find something you enjoy, like going to a dance class. If you love the elliptical, more power to you. But like if you don't love it, go find something you enjoy. If you're doing a job you hate, well, we should chat because I want all of my women who I work with always to be in this energy of fun in what they're doing. And like my mastermind, I have women who run their own businesses, and I'm like, it should definitely be fun. Like if you don't find it fun, um, this is like the most important energy you want to bring to anything that you're doing. And so for me, I always am like, okay, how, if something is not fun, how can I make it fun? Is it something I need to do to change? Is it something that I actually literally need to change in my schedule? Or for me, reading sometimes, like I love doing a long literary book, but sometimes they feel a little bit too much. And so I've really allowed myself to have so much fun with my books this year. The romance fantasies, like I cannot even recommend them more because they just bring a lightness and an energy and a fun. And I just get so absorbed in them. They're so immersive and they just take me to this like exciting, cool world for the time that I'm reading the book. So I just am always like the lesson of choosing fun really showed up for me big this year, both in business, social media, but also in like how I'm spending my time with activities, time with my family and my husband. Like, what are we doing? Is it fun? And if it's not, how can we bring more fun in? So if you're looking for that one too, like I highly recommend fun as a way to like kind of get a cool intention heading into 2025. Okay, lesson 3. This is not a new lesson, but this is a really good lesson because I've had to like go through it a couple times. So this lesson is family comes first. Um, this is my value. This is always my priority. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit how it showed up for me this year. So, my family last year, we planned a trip to Taiwan in February, and which was like honestly overwhelmingly like one of the best trips I have taken in years. Like, it was so much fun. And I cannot say that in the past I would have felt that way about a trip this big with this much family because I went with my parents, my sister's family, and Michael and I went. And so there was a lot of us. There was like a lot of family dynamics at play, but we really had such a good time. Like I got to see so many of the family that I have in Taiwan. I ate the most amazing food. Michael had never been there, so we had so much fun exploring Taipei, soaking up the culture. We traveled to the south end of the island. Like it was such an incredible vacation, and it was long enough that we really had a lot of space and time to relax. Like I hadn't felt that relaxed in so long, and just everything about it worked incredibly well. And I just was so proud. Like, yeah, of course, like I'm taking this huge family trip. My family comes first. It's so good. But then we were done with that trip in February and March came, and then the rest of the year just kind of raced by. And I had to travel. I did travel. I chose to travel a ton for business, and I had a lot of fun there. I went to New York twice. I went to California. I went to Whidbey Island for my clients. I went to Austin, Texas for the Asian American Journalists Association. I did a lot of really interesting, fun trips this year. But by the end of the year, I realized that I hadn't really prioritized my family again. Like, of all the things I had done, and I had done some stuff with Michael, but other than that, like, I hadn't gone to see my parents or do things that were really restorative for me personally and that weren't related to work. It's like I just did it. I threw it all in early and then I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm good." And I kind of counted myself out for the rest of the year. And it showed in that I wanted to feel more connected to my family because I actually had seen them a ton leading up to Taiwan. And then all of a sudden I didn't see them for months. And I just don't want that. It actually showed me how I want to prioritize 2025. I want it to be more deeper, more meaningful, more connection with my family, more consistently spending time with them, and not letting business and other things that are going on in my life get in the way of prioritizing the people I care about the most. And it is possible to balance both of them. There's no question. I know for myself, like I max out at basically one trip a month. And even that's like, I would prefer like one every 6 weeks or so. And so if that's my personal preference in terms of my energy, how am I going to spend that next year? Like, what am I going to look at? And I do remember at the end of 2023 looking ahead to trips in 2024, and I listed them all out. And I was like, holy crap! Like, I don't know if I can do all that. Like, that feels like a lot. And I did end up canceling some trips this year that were just also for me or for fun, and to just even be home. And this is again personal preference. I know some people who love to travel twice a month is like no big deal for them. But for me, I'm definitely a homebody. Like I like to be in my house. I like to be in my routine. And so if I'm going to take myself out of it, it has to be for something that feels really correct and aligned with myself and my values. And so for 2025, I can already tell like I'm going to be making some changes based on how this year went and what I was looking at. And again, we had such a great family trip this year. Like I would never give that up. It was so amazing. And I'm just seeing different things I want to do to support being in that value of family comes first. Okay, lesson 2. This one this one is such a good one because I have to practice this one all the time. So you have to take risks so you can learn the lessons. That's the lesson. Take risks so you can learn the lessons. Like sometimes we think that we have to take the risks just because, but I actually often for me when I'm taking risks, and I'm an entrepreneur. Like for me, risk taking is less scary than it is for some other people. Like I'm used to taking them, but even though I'm used to taking them, it doesn't make them actually less scary. And I have found every time I do take a risk, it shows me something. And this year showed me so many things. So I took a really big risk this year within my business. And it's really going to cover this lesson 2 and lesson 1. And I will say this, it might not seem like that big a risk to you. Like this will be like, oh, whatever. That seems so normal. That doesn't seem like a really big deal. But it felt like an enormous risk to me for lots of different reasons. So I decided this year to focus my business energy on Asian American women, specifically Asian American corporate leaders. And you might be like, yeah, duh, Nicole, we've been hearing about it. We know that's what you work on. We know that's what you share and teach. And the first moment was like, oh, yeah, duh, of course. Like, this makes so much sense. Of course, you want to do it. But then once I started to make that transition, and some of you may have heard the podcast from February where I shared about this transition, it was actually really terrifying for me. And it's sort of funny to share why, but I really had a ton of imposter syndrome. And I'm someone who has worked through a lot of imposter syndrome. Like I worked through it in journalism. I worked through it when I was teaching yoga. I worked through it in starting my own business. But in this case, the imposter syndrome felt like really profound. It felt really hard too. Like the first part of the imposter syndrome is like I didn't feel Asian enough to focus on Asian American women. Like I was afraid and felt anxious that I would get rejected by the very women I wanted to work with. And I really started to be so hard on myself. Like I felt like I didn't have enough Asian friends, or I didn't do enough Asian related things. So how could I possibly be leading and creating community with Asian women? And this all came up despite having Asian American clients. Let's be clear, I had them. I just wasn't exclusively focused on Asian American women. And so while it might have seemed really natural on the outside, on the inside, there was like night terrors, like so much anxiety, so much stress about this. And it was so hard for me at different times that there were a few moments where I was like, maybe I should backtrack and go back to serving like all high achieving women or all high achieving women of color, which were the areas I had focused on previously. But every time I considered it, there was also something deep in me that was like, no, Nicole, do not go back. And this is not something you turn back from. And this is something I really do teach in Your Clear Calling in my course because it was truly a calling. And when I've only had a few really, really strong callings within my business over the years. Starting my business was one. The second one was really around um, working this way with women. Actually, I need to pause. The strongest calls I've had in my business were to start my business. And then I would actually really say then this, like that's it. Like those are the biggest, deepest calls. Like I've had many other things that I've done that have been experiments and testing, but this one actually felt very much like a call. Oh, the second one would be when I decided to focus more on women of color. And then now obviously this one honing it to Asian American women. But as I was shifting my business and shifting my focus, I also started to recognize and realize how few people directly serve this community. If you listen to the podcast with Florence Shin, the co founder of Covry, who makes inclusive eyewear, which really supports women with flatter nose bridges, high cheekbones, like Asian women. She said, a lot of times, like we don't even realize that we feel so invisible because we're not served. And I really felt that with her business. Like, I love her glasses. You should check it out. But I have noticed this also with the women I talk to who are thinking about coming to work with me or coming in to work with me because they feel really unseen and unheard in a lot of different ways, whether it's at their, if you're getting leadership coaching even at work, like you're not really getting served in the cultural challenges that you personally experience. They're not people who necessarily have gone through those same experiences that you've had. And I have really recognized since doing this how unseen and unheard so many Asian American women feel in their jobs and out in the world, that there aren't people who speak to their particular cultural challenges and dynamics that they grew up with and what they experience and that affect them in the workplace. And actually, what the more I've done it and the longer I stuck with it, and I'm really proud of myself for staying with the course, is that it is so important for someone like me with a platform, decades of work, working on myself to stand up and say that you are worthy. I see you. I hear you. I am you. And what you want in your life matters. And it's truly been the biggest blessing. Like I didn't think it was going to be such a big deal when I did it, but it really has been. It's sort of rocked me personally to my very core. And I'll share more about that in lesson one. But it's also been such a cool thing to generate and build Asian American community. And I have met the coolest women who are in my cohort, your clear calling, like the clients, the women I've hosted on this podcast. Like, God, there's so many brilliant Asian American women doing such incredible things out in the world. And I just love getting to talk to them about their businesses and their lives and what they're working on. And I've just personally have felt seen and heard in a way and seen myself in a way that I never had previously. And I realized I was the only person who was ever holding myself back from having more of this community, having more of this communication, connection, and expansion. So, taking those risks so you can learn the lessons, man, I'm really proud of that lesson from this year because I took a really big risk for me personally. And it really has shown me so much and is actually leading me to my biggest lesson of 2024. And that biggest lesson was how to be unapologetically Asian American. I heard this term first from the co-founder of 1587, which is a sneaker for Asian Americans, Sam Hyun. And I was heard him speaking at the Asian American Journalists Association. And then I looked up his brand, and he really talks a lot about being unapologetically Asian American. And, they've been raked over the coals for that. And they've also been on Shark Tank for it. And it's been really fascinating to watch how they brand themselves, how they talk about it, and how they have so much pride in being Asian American. And they said that's often missing for the community is like being super proud to be Asian. And I see that within myself. This year has been a really big uncovering of all the ways of how I have suppressed a lot of myself, like the Asian side of myself, because I literally have lived all the negative cultural blocks that I help my clients clear because I have seen the ways that I've used like the Asian pressure cycle I teach. We talk about the pressure from our parents to be part of the group, the collective, the whole. So like I spent my whole life trying to make people happy, so that is one big pressure that I always experience. And then I had the second part of the pressure cycle is the pressure you get from our society, which is always telling us we're not enough, we need more stuff, we need better houses, we need better cars, we need better partners, etc. And then the third part of that cycle is pressure to fit in as a person of color and an Asian American in particular. And what I have recognized within myself is like I was just always trying to fit a mold that would make other people happy. And you can call it any of the number of things that you want to call it. But for myself, it was more just understanding where, while I was my authentic self in many ways of my life, like I have this podcast, I have my business, I speak publicly very frequently, I was still holding back the Asian side of myself. And when I really started to look at it, I realized how Asian I am. And I know it sounds a little bit silly to say it that way, but it was just like this really big eye opener for me. It's like, well, it's the way that I cook. It's the fact that I take my shoes off. It's the way that I care about the whole of the collective. It's the way that I value my parents and my family. It's the way that staying connected with my family in Taiwan and having both this experience of being connected and distant because, they don't live here. They're not American culture. Like Taiwanese culture is different from American culture. And just, having this experience of seeing all the places in my life where I held back who I was from my Asian side because I felt like I wouldn't be understood or people would judge me for it. And that now that I am spending so much more time in Asian communities and really proactively connecting with Asian women, like it's really profound to be able to just share. It's profound to be able to just be myself and everyone expects it. And I was at an event last week where it was for Asian American entrepreneurs and there are Filipino and Chinese and Vietnamese. And it was like really sweet too, how people were kind of breaking off into their own groups and like talking in their languages and talking and like making jokes that like were, like just it was just so fun because like what they joke about is different from what I might joke about, but we all like related to each other having that. And so there was something just really powerful in being connected to people that way. And the more I am putting myself into those places and spaces, like the more I'm just like feeling deeper on some deeper level in my own skin, some deeper level of like acceptance for myself, of feeling much more powerful in who I am and owning who I am and not worrying about what other people are going to say or think about me. And, I'm doing it in public spaces on social media. I'm doing it on this podcast. I'm also doing it in my own personal life. And it actually is helping me feel really relaxed and at peace in a totally different way. It's been a super powerful place to explore, to look, to know myself in a totally different way. And it's frankly been very liberating in the most profound way. I have uncovered so much about myself, and I've been able to teach from that space, and I've been able to support my clients from that space. And it's really all that I could ever ask, as a teacher, as a leader, to be able to see more of myself in a way that will really support my clients and my people. And so, yeah, I just see that experience this year will only get deeper and richer as, I continue on this pathway. Serving Asian American women and supporting them is really, it feels like such a deep calling at this point. And I feel really grateful to the other Asian American communities that I'm part of who have supported me and continue to support me. And I feel like just, I don't know, there's just something that feels really necessary at this time in history too, to have us be seen in a totally different way, for us to be recognized and to be honored for who we are, because we have so much power and we have so much intelligence and we have so much to give. Like we're so gifted. Like these women I am working with are so extraordinarily gifted. And so I'm just sharing that with all of you. Like it's been just like, the honor of my life to see this and recognize that this year. And man, it's been a lesson I really didn't expect when I made this switch to really focus more on Asian American women. I was kind of like, yeah, I already know myself. How much more can I learn? And wow, that was a deep rabbit hole that I am still working my way through. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful to all of you for listening and being here as I made that switch and still being here with me and listening and acknowledging the lessons that you're learning and sharing with us feedback from what you're getting from what I talk about and what I teach and share with all of you on the pod. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being part of this massive journey for me this year. Okay, friends. So that's it. That's the last lesson. So these are my 8 biggest lessons from the year. Thank you so much for listening, being part of this conversation. If you want to chat with me more about really getting something into place, a promotion plan for 2025, you know where to reach me. Instagram at Nicole Song, DM me 2025, and let's talk. And I am just so grateful to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for a profound year in the School of Self Worth, and I'll talk to you soon.